Auction season is among us, and we bid on 10 watches in last week's Hong Kong Sotheby sale, and we only got one. So what is going on?
It's because you're too cheap.
Oh, so I guess Nico rubbed off on you, huh? All right, that's what we're doing now. All right, I'll allow it. Let's see where this goes. Before we get started, please remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to learn more about vintage watches and you like this content. And as always, if you're interested in buying or selling vintage watches, contact us on the website at mentowatches.com. Without further ado, let's jump right in. I pulled out a bunch of lots that I found were interesting results in the auction, including the ones I lost. I want to take a look at them. All the lots start with a 2 in front of it, so we're just going to say the numbers after that if you want to follow along at home, but they should be on the screen if Guy's doing his job. So let's jump right into it with number 111 and 112 together. They are two modern or modern-ish Daytonas, a Zenith Daytona and a 116520, more modern Daytona after the Zenith era. Both of them sold for what I consider big numbers in auction. Guys, if you're going to be bidding on a watch at auction, make sure it's something special. Make sure it's something that you can't go out and source from a guy like me or dozens of other dealers out there in the market where you could find it cheaper.
Didn't you just get one of your best friends one of these, and isn't he super cheap?
Indeed I did, Guy. Indeed I did. Shout out to Justin. He just got his first big boy watch. We got him a 116520 in black, box and papers for $21,000 landed to him. These two in auction sold for $27,500 all in US dollars, and that's not including what you might have to pay in currency conversions, shipping, and customs. So figure it's going to be closer to $30,000. Sometimes it never really makes sense to me why people buy these watches in auction that they could go out and source on the open market by themselves for significantly cheaper. Again, if you're buying something in auction, make sure it's something special and something that you can't ordinarily get from a dealer like me or from an ordinary source like Chrono 24 and whatnot. Moving right along to the lot right after that, 113. There weren't many stone dials in this auction, but there was one that I was bidding on, which is the first lot that I bid on and lost, a 18238 with an onyx dial. So we have a yellow gold date 8 with a factory black stone onyx dial. I've seen these trading in the open market in the 30 to 35 range, and this one had a Swiss-made dial, so it's a later end of production, not super favored by collectors. I think we bid in the neighborhood of 28 to 30,000 and got blown out. It sold for an all-in price of 42,000. Again, that's before customs and shipping and currency conversion. It shows some strength in what I felt was a softening in the stone dial market, which is a good sign. But again, it's a watch that you can find on the open market for less and shouldn't be paying auction fees just because it's a shiny watch in an auction. Next lot is an interesting one to break down. We did not bid on it, but it is lot 116. It is a 16528 yellow gold Zenith Daytona with a pave dial and emeralds in it. Really beautiful and awesome watch, but it made me scratch my head. It sold for 105,000 US dollars all in, which I thought was an absolutely crazy price. And the way I do the math on these things when I'm looking to buy them is, what is that dial worth to me? Because that watch with a just factory champagne or normal black dial is somewhere in the range of $30,000 to $40,000 without box and papers, which this one also didn't have. So if you do the math and you subtract 30,000 from 105,000, we get to a value on the dial of around $75,000. To me, that's absolutely crazy. I think this watch should be worth well under $100,000. While it is beautiful and rare, I don't know that I place such a crazy premium on the dial, and I think you could probably find these out in the open market for a lot less money. Continuing with Daytonas, starting with lot 2119, we found a set of 4 beach Daytonas spread out throughout the next 10 or lots or so, which sold for astronomical numbers in my opinion.
Hey, doesn't your mom have one of those, and doesn't that make it worth more now?
Indeed she does, Guy. No, it does not make it worth more. She has the pink one, and I think when there are crazy results like this at auction, it should not be indicative of the overall market, and B, she beats the shit out of that watch, so for her case, definitely not worth more. But anyways, we had 4 beach Daytonas, all of the colors, seemingly all with box and papers, and granted, those boxes are very rare. They're leather colored to match the watch, which matches the strap, which matches the booklet inside, and it's hard to find them, and the boxes sell for a lot of money by themselves. That being said, that market has been very depressed since its peak around 2022. For example, the most valuable one should be the turquoise one, which peaked I think at around $130,000, came all the way down probably to about half of that value, and now we're seeing auction results where they're right back up to where they were at the peak a couple years ago. The blue beach one sold for $81,000 full set. The green sold for a whopping $130,000, which makes no sense because I thought the blue would always be worth more than the green, but hey. The pink one, which my mom will be thrilled about, sold for $113,500. And the yellow one, I don't know, I didn't look up with the yellow one, but it sold for a big amount too. Long story short, again, these are watches that if you go on Chrono24 right now, I guarantee you there are a lot of them available on the open market for a lot less. And since they've been slow, there's always a seller that is willing to sell it to you and negotiate. It's definitely a buyer's market. I don't understand what happened in this auction, but maybe it's indicative of the times and the tides changing. We'll see. Let's continue going down the list. Next lot 134, was a Cartier from 1996, originally made for the magical art of Cartier, a piece unique in platinum, the cloche.
Wasn't that the one that you dropped the ball on?
Oh, did we drop the ball, my friend? The estimate was 200 to 400,000 Hong Kong dollars. If I recall correctly, it was like 20 to 40 US dollars or something like that. I bid the minimum, thinking it's cool, but it also has Cartier Paris written around the dial, which is kind of ugly if you ask me. And it sold for 10 times the minimum estimate. It sold for all in $211,000, which goes to show you, in my opinion, two things. Number one, Cartier is still very hot.
That Hansel's so hot right now.
Whether it's vintage, neo-vintage, or modern, collectors are flocking to the brand. I think a large in part justified. And number two, anytime you have something that's a piece unique or something truly special, it's always going to command a crazy price. And I guess I lowballed that one and really fudged it up. Sticking with Cartier, lot 138 was a lot I did bid on. I did not win again. It was a 1991 Paris Cartier crash, full set. Now, we've seen a softening in the market, or at least so I thought, whereas last year, all of the crashes that sold in auction sold for under $200,000, although when you go to find them on the open market, expect to pay over $200,000 because they're still hard to find. We just sourced one for Nico that you can see in his video from last week. In any case, we bid around $180,000 on this watch, all in, expecting that we can sell it to a client for maybe $190,000 to $200,000. It sold all in for $227,000, not even that much less than Sir John Elton's watch sold for at auction a few months back. I've seen a big uptick in desire and price on the crash model, whether it was softening up a little bit last year. I think there's another resurgence of interest, or maybe it just waned for a little bit and it's back. Either way, I don't think the crash market is going anywhere. So if you're in the market for one, expect to pay in that price range, and I don't expect to see it softening up anytime soon. And our final Cartier lot, which we actually did bid on, was lot 140, which was a Benoit Allongy.
Adam, don't even try to speak French.
Yeah, you're probably right. I probably messed up the pronunciation of that one. Okay, so this watch was essentially a maxi oval, a big cylindrical watch from 1991, same year as the crash that just auctioned right before it that we bid on. Really cool watch, really hard to find. I figured I could sell it for $55,000, maybe $60,000 because Cartier is so hot right now.
That Hansel's so hot right now.
So I think we bid $50,000, and again, we were blown out and it sold for over $70,000. I think exactly it sold for, $68,000 all in. I thought it was a strong price. I didn't think I could even sell it myself for that much. Goes to show you again, though, that finding rare and desirable Cartier is always going to be a challenge these days. I think that market is here to stay. Don't quote me on it. I could be wrong, but that's what I've seen so far in the market. The next three lots that we bid on were lots 171, 172, and 178. They were three watches made by the brand Urban Jürgensen. Urban Jürgensen has been around for a long time, back to the 1700s. The company was sold many times, and it was basically revitalized around 1979 by Peter Baumberger and Derek Pratt, two watchmakers who have a very storied history with watchmaking, and they were able to relaunch the brand and make some really interesting watches. Now, when I think of this brand, and I know my friend Rob Stakey, shout out to @Bazamu on Instagram, is going to laugh at me because I used to call these watches old man watches. When I think about these watches, especially from this period in particular, before 2000 when the brand was sold yet again, we're looking at what I consider vintage independence. So we have independent watchmaking, as everybody's well aware of, but there's not really many vintage independents. And when I think of Urban Jürgensen, I think of early F.B. Journe, the brass movement stuff, and early Urwerk like the 102 that was just reloaded as the 102 Reloaded. There's not many independents that you could call vintage, and I think this one fits the bill. So I'd seen the market on the rise. I dipped my toes trying to buy a few of them. I was pretty unsuccessful. We did pick up one of them, but the other two we were outbid on. They all sold in the neighborhood of $25,000 to $28,000. This specific reference is available online for more money, but I would keep an eye on Urban Jürgensen's, and I'm not just trying to say that to prop up the market because now I own a grand total of one of them. I do think they are special watches with special history. The brand was recently bought by Cartier Voutilanen?
Adam, what did I say before?
Fair enough. I'm not going to try to butcher his name. Anyways, really important and master independent watchmaker. I'm sure you guys have seen him around before. His watches are incredible. Anyways, he and his daughter recently invested and bought the brand, and they are going to relaunch it at some point, I think this year, with some new watches, and obviously offer services to restore any old watches. Again, pay attention to the watches before, I think it's right around 2000. So from 1985 to 2000, there's some really special, limited, low production watches in there that I consider to be kind of the vintage world of independent watchmaking, and it could be something special for the future. Again, I could be wrong, maybe no one agrees with me, but that's where I see that market going. There are a lot of cool modern watches in the sale, but we're going to jump through those because A, I didn't bid on them, and B, this is a vintage channel. Let's jump down to the next lot we did bid on, and again, we lost lot 214, which was a Patek Philippe Perpetual calendar, reference 3940J in yellow gold, this one being a full set with a second series dial. It looked to be a beautiful watch. This is a watch that I like to buy right around the $40,000 mark, sell them for $45,000 to $50,000 depending on how nice it is, how complete it is, etc. This one sold for $57,000. Again, it's a market that has been on the uptick. I think the 3940 and the 3970 have always been undervalued watches that you could pick up for $100,000 when you're talking about 3970 and $50,000 when you're talking about 3940 or less. This market continues to climb, and while they are very classically styled watches, when I think vintage Patek Philippe Perpetual calendars and Perpetual calendar chronographs that aren't crazy priced like a $24.99 or a $15.18, these are the watches that I think about, and I think they will stand the test of time, and it goes to show you how much collectors have been flocking to them lately and how much the prices have been climbing. Not blowing up like crazy, they haven't doubled in price, but it's a steady, nice increase, which I like to see. I don't like to see exponential curve where prices just double overnight for no seemingly reason, shout out to COVID pricing. I like to see, nice 5-10% increases over time because it shows a stable and healthy market. This watch sold for a lot more than I was willing to pay and a lot more than I thought I could sell it for, but it was a really nice watch, and it's nice to see that strength in the marketplace. I would be remiss if I didn't bring up this lot, although we did not bid. It is a very important watch, lot 224, which was the very first production, reference 2526 Patek Calatrava with an enamel dial. It was made for one of the most important watch collectors of all time, a Texas lawyer and super collector named J.B. Champion. J.B. Champion was monumentally important, had Patek Philippe making some incredible watches just for him, piece uniques that have sold over the years. So anyways, this was the very first of this reference to ever be sold. A normal 2526 in yellow gold, depending on the condition and dial variant, etc., should sell for around $30,000 to $70,000. I know it's a wild spread, but there's a lot of variables that go into it. Anyways, this one sold for over 10x that. It sold for a total of $730,000 US. Again, just goes to show you when you have a very special, rare, and important watch, it's going to command a huge premium. And these are the watches that, if you have the money, they're great to collect. It's a watch that I wish I could own, wish I could afford to own, but maybe one day I'll be as cool as JB Champion.
Nope.
Yeah, probably not. The next lot I did bid on, lot 249, was a very simple 34mm Gerald Genta Mickey Retro Fantasy. Now, why do I bring this watch up? Well, because LVMH is revitalizing the brand, and Genta is going to be coming out with a new Mickey watch that's going to be priced in the stratosphere. I think there's great value in these watches, since their opening watch with Mickey on the dial will be priced, I think, in the six figures. Don't quote me on that, but I know it's going to be expensive and hard to get. This one is the 34mm variety that I was actually, I think, the closest to buying out of all these watches that I lost. Sold for $11,500 all in. I think we bid like one increment less than that, maybe two. Anyways, these are still great value, I think, and they are kind of neo-vintage in the Genta sphere, and I can see a huge resurgence and interest in the brand since they are coming out with new watches in the near future. So keep an eye. It's maybe not for everybody because not everybody wants Disney characters on their dial, but Genta did make some other fantastic watches while he was producing his own stuff, such as some crazy perpetual calendars, skeletons, minute repeaters, etc. Towards the end of the sale, there was a lot of interesting vintage Rolex in the sale. We bid on some of them. We didn't bid on a lot of them because I wasn't a huge fan of the condition of them, but let's go through a few of the results just to kind of take a look at how they stack up with what I think the current market is. The first lot I did bid on was lot 274, which was a reference 6263 Daytona with a black Big Red dial. I didn't love the condition. I thought it was okay. It was great for a collector who wasn't too picky and didn't want to spend 100 grand for a perfect one. It sold for 68,000 all in. I think we bid right around there, 65, 64 or something like that. Again, average watches sell for average prices. Great watches sell for great prices. This was a watch that, while it was not incorrect or anything crazy wrong with it, the condition just was average at best, and it sold for an average price. Not far after that, lot 277, they sold a Mark III double red Sea Dweller reference 1665. Now, I didn't bid on this watch because it had a service bezel and I didn't want to have to go through the trouble of finding and locating a $2,500 bezel, but it sold for what I found to be a very strong price. I've seen a huge softening in the double red market, whereas prices were usually in the 40 to 50K range, even pre-COVID. You could pick them up in the 30 to 40 range. This one sold for 45,500 US dollars, and it needed a part that is kind of hard to find and will cost you a little bit of money. So figure your all-in cost to make this watch absolutely perfect would be closer to 50,000. I thought that was kind of strong. I wouldn't pay anywhere near that, but it was interesting and good to see that there is some interest or renewed interest in the double red market. That was always a really stable watch over the past decade. It was weird to see them dip last year, whereas prices were dropping down into the 30s, which we hadn't seen for quite some time. Maybe they're picking back up a little bit, but still approachable for collectors who are looking for one. And again, I don't like to see huge swings in prices. So if that watch had ballooned to $60,000, for example, during COVID, and then flatlined all the way down to $30,000, it would be a bad sign. But when the market kind of stayed the same during COVID and then went down a little bit, now back up to where it was before COVID, it's a good sign of stability in that market. So if you're in the market for a double red Sea Dweller, don't be scared by any of the prices going down, because it seems like they're more or less stable where they should be. Now, the next lot that we're going to discuss is a watch that I did bid on. I didn't win, and I really regret not going harder for it. It is lot 278. It is a Rolex Explorer reference 1016 with a Mark I dial, but what makes this watch special is that the lume plots are what we call fat font. For whatever reason, I don't know why myself, the lume numbers 369 on certain Mark I dials, not all of them, certain Mark I dials have this big, huge, puffy appearance. Maybe it's just the way they applied the lume on those specific dials. Anyways, they usually go for a premium. This one sold for $16,000. We bid right under that. In my opinion, it's a $20,000 watch, maybe even a little bit more, because they're really hard to find and they're really cool. There is something to say when you look at them side by side to a normal Mark I dial or any other normal 1016, that fat font really stands out. The next lot, lot 280, was a result that really surprised me. We're talking about a Rolex GMT Master Reference 1675 with a blueberry insert.
Shady.
Indeed, guy, indeed. I don't want to go into the details of whether or not blueberries are real or not, but there has been heated debate as to whether or not these inserts were even produced by Rolex, fitted on watches from the factory, if there's service bezels. There's tons of information and, debate out there on the internet. You could find it just by Googling it yourself. Because of all the controversy and non-conclusive research that we have on the blueberry or all blue GMT insert, prices really took a steep decline over the past few years. Where they were once trading for 40, 45 grand, they dropped all the way down into the 20s. A lot of people didn't want to touch them because of all of the, mud that was slung about them, where there's a camp of people who believe in them and a camp of people who don't. Long story short, this watch without the blueberry insert should be selling in the mid-teens. This one sold with a blueberry insert, no box, no papers, nothing, for $57,000. So you're putting $40,000 or more premium on that insert that may or may not be genuine or correct, or even a Rolex product. I think that's crazy. I'm going to leave it at that. I really don't need to go into the details more of a blueberry insert. You guys are free to form your own opinions on them, but I found that to be an absolutely crazy result. And the last three lots that we bid on, we'll go through very quickly. Lot 281 was a Paul Newman reference 6241 Daytona with a black dial. The condition was very average at best for me. It looked okay, but the case was uber polished. We'll pull up a picture of this really skinny lug. Maybe somebody fell asleep at the polishing wheel while polishing it. It sold for $310,000 all in, which I found absolutely crazy. We recently sold an incredible mint example for less than that. I think this is very much a case of do your homework, do your research, make sure you're okay with the condition of the watch before paying such a huge premium for it. The second to last lot that I bid on was lot 309, which was a 16528 yellow gold Zenith Daytona with a early 4-line dial. So it was an L serial with box and papers and a black 4-line dial, something very rare, only produced for 1 year. We recently sold one with a white dial that you could see here for significantly less than the one that sold in auction. We sold ours for $47,500. This one sold for $73,000. Now again, there is a little bit of a premium because it is a black dial, and in yellow gold cases, black dials are always preferable, and it is a hard watch to find. But that being said, I found that watch to be absolutely crazy. Condition was crazy, it was beautiful, but the price was absolutely crazy. It's a hard watch to replace. I kind of get it, but also not really. I think that result was very, very strong, but whoever bought it's certainly going to enjoy it. And the last lot we bid on, for completeness sake, just to run you guys through every single lot that we bid on, was 320, which was a Patek Philippe Aquanaut reference 5065 with a tritium dial. So the very first jumbo they made. This one happened to be a full set. I thought it sold for a very fair price to a collector. It sold for $36,000, so maybe your landed cost would be like around $40,000. It's about what we would sell that watch for, maybe even a little more. I think whoever got that watch did great. Probably should have bid a little bit more on it. So what does all this mean? Well, it's the first auction of the season, so it'll be interesting to see how the year progresses and how the auctions do as we approach the end of May and into the mega auctions in Geneva in May. Certainly were very strong results for vintage watches. I mean, heck, we only got 1 out of 10 watches that we bid on. Maybe we were too cheap, but I think the results were pretty strong. And it goes to show you that when the watches are really good, it's very hard to buy them in auction. And again, as I said at the beginning of the video, if you're bidding on a watch that is easily available from other sources other than auction, don't overpay in auction. Well guys, thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed that auction recap of last week's Hong Kong Sotheby sales. Hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye.